Now, if you were, Saturn's in your 7th or 8th, the 7th house, and it's your 12-year-olds when that happens. You know, it can be coming up when you've had your parents guiding you all the way, and your family's been setting the standard and everything. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter anymore. What am I doing here? I don't fit in there. You're going to get more of a rebellion. It depends when it comes. But this identity crisis, everyone gets it somewhere in the first 30 years. This is the beginning of the individuation of your life. It's the beginning of you having to form who you are. If it happens before you're 14 and 15, well, that's happening to you. It's not like you're consciously making efforts to make it happen, partially, but not so dramatically. It's more from parents, teachers, authorities, parents splitting up, somebody getting sick or someone not there, problems around you and it's just normal to you. I never knew we were poor till I got to school. I saw other people had more than me. It's just what was ever we were dealing with. I never realized the extent of the abuse and things I went through until I was 40 or 50 years old looking back. Even now I see it differently than then, but I grew up in an alcoholic, violent home situation. I survived it. To me, that was normal growing up. It became different when I started to watch kids and watch other people going through running through different experiences. So when you're doing this, you're going to learn about each person's experience. You got to see your own and see how it works and work with it. This is a gong that's going to go off. You're going to be working on this graph, on this Saturn triangles across your lifetime. You're always, first question, where's Saturn? What's it doing? Where's my responsibility? Where's the work? Where's the restrictions? Wherever there's restrictions or limitations, it's telling you, wherever there's a problem, in that problem, it's telling you what effort needs to be made to fix it. Inhibition is the source of ambition. You know, so you wouldn't be ambitious if you didn't have some inhibition to overcome. You know, so a lot of this depends on your natal chart attitude, where your sun is, where your planets are, above, rise and below, rising, setting. You see your attitudes to these things, to outer participation, into projecting out, to reacting from it to others, to making the influence or responding to other people, rising or setting. But when you're going over the end, it's been outer world has been real for 15 years or whatever portion of it you were born through. This identity crisis that comes in, suddenly you run into a challenge to you that's not a functional problem. There's something wrong with me. There's something I'm not fitting in. I can't fit in there anymore. Or there were more pressure on, more homework, more other things coming in when you're young. And the first showing is you start getting depressed. You start feeling restricted, down, bored, depressed. Why bother? You're brooding. This is the identity crisis. I'm not good enough. Who am I? Why is this here? Why is this pressure? And the pressure is there so that you make sure you solve this. But to realize how insecure or how inhibited or how limited you are when Saturn's in your ascendant, to overcome the problems that are making you feel that insecure, it's going to take you 15 years to regroup and regather and really solve this puzzle. So it seems like it's too formidable. I'll never solve this. I could never deal with that. Oh, geez, why bother? Okay, so when you're older and you're going through these things, maybe we'll just do this from the younger first and go around it, and then and go around it 2 or 3 times for different ages, so that we get a sense of this. It's so valuable. But the growth and influence of status of the world around you being real and what you're living into and playing up on it, how you influence people, what you can get done, what you can't get done. It's like you got power when you're a kid if it's there, or you have authority coming down and pressing you, but your growth is around status and position, what you can get away with, what you can accomplish, what you can do in context to others. Hey, honey, look at this. Hey, son, go show your daddy, or go show this. And you're reacting that way. Some kids have this gift of being able to work the family and work everybody, get the reactions they want, and knows exactly how to play it off to get the attentions they need. Some people don't get it. Some people have other puzzles. It's not there, and they're in a different, they have their personal subjective growth phase happening at a younger age. So I'm just taking this example. So when the identity crisis comes in, you suddenly no longer identified where you were. Something's problems come up where you're not fitting in, you're being restricted, you're being held back, you're not fitting in, it's not going the way it was. And because it's not going the way it was, who are you? Whatever was useful, whatever was done, I can't do this anymore, I can't do that. And people are, it can be bullies, and people coming in, but you're not fitting in. It could be a group going along and throwing you out and you're not fitting in. It's a huge thing. And you're feeling alone and isolated and brooding, and you're kind of depressed and melancholic, and you're not, and really it starts as Saturn goes into the 12th house. It's for about a year and a half before you start moving towards this, but it's harder to see when you're a kid, when it's a kid. You can see that this is coming, and you're having to prepare them to have to do things for themselves, do their homework on their own, to, I don't know, just process things for themselves, get their own room or something, when they're used to be sharing a room. But so this is very formative. And because you realize you can't rely on the system around you or the situation around you, and you're no longer participating in the same way, you're not going to get the same response. Other people are going to get more positions than you. Oh, for me, my brother was born. Suddenly I didn't have the same status. Boom, came in like that. We'll come around to my story later anyways, but just this identity crisis, it changes your outlook of how you see yourself. It never was formed. You're just going along. You're born, you have your personality, you have your center, you're going along, and sooner or later, boom, you have to measure it, and it's not enough. How do you fix it? You don't fix it if it doesn't feel like it needs to be fixed. So you have to feel this restriction first. You have to run into the problem first to be able to see what that problem is. Okay. I will use my example here because just coming into this, my mother got pregnant. You know, my parents were struggling, but my mother got pregnant. I was during that pregnant. My brother was born when the first time Saturn had ascended, and then as my mother's pregnant, my brother was born. Her father died, her mother died, and her older brother died 2 months apart from each other within 6 months of the baby being born. So she had her new life, and she had all the death around her, and she was all isolated. So she had problems. How much attention would I get when she's having to take care of the new kid and taking care of all the parents dying, and here I'm like, so my identity crisis was formed by those things, not measurable when you're a couple of years old. They're more distinct. Well, it's fairly distinct once I found out what was going on around me, and I became curious and asked about these things. But a lot of times parents don't want to talk about them, but they happen to you. When you're older, it's more easy to see the problems. You're not fitting in, you're not there, you're pulling yourself away. Why? What do you, and you know, it changes, this identity crisis comes in. So you begin seeing, at first, while Saturn's above the horizon, you're motivated to do things. You're motivated to do things. When Saturn hits your ascendant, it's like you lose your motivation. You've used it up, and why bother? You know, like as a little kid, for me, I could get attention. I could do anything. I get noticed for it. Oh, wow, great. I could do anything. Get noticed for it, get attention for it. By the time my brother was born, I'm off playing on my own. I'm not getting attention for things. And the attention I need would get disciplined because there's other things that have to be taken care of. So you want to get to a certain place where you can trust this, where you know this is there so well that you can, when you're not seeing it, you look at the person's chart, you look at them more, you question it, and you've got to see it happening there. It's got to be there. But this identity crisis, as a teenager, it's going to be when you're you grew up in your family, you've been going to school, you don't fit in, you're going to rebel, I don't fit in, the system sucks, who needs this? And you're going to go into your own depression. Of course, then you hide away in computer games, or you take alcohol or drugs, or disassociate, and you have the antisocial situation where you feel you're not good enough. So how can you participate in social influence when you're not feeling good enough yourself? When everyone else that seems better than you to you. Now that can come from a bully, from a parent, from so many authority factors can come in and bring this in, but it triggers this identity crisis of feeling inadequate. I feel inadequate, my identity. I'm not good enough, something's wrong, why is this happening? How come it's not working for me? Okay, and that forces this pressure. So I call it an identity crisis, but it's really changing the face from being in the functional world outward to realizing something's missing in yourself, and every week goes by that, like when you're in this identity crisis, or even a bit before it, you're like, we see the growth and functioning, growth and influence above the horizon. As it goes into 12th, it comes to you, you're not getting the growth and influence. You're sensitive to it, but other people are getting promotions, raises, other people are getting authority, and you're not being included the same way. You're being left out. And if you're being left out, it doesn't seem fair. How can this be? And what can I do about it? I can't do anything about it. So why bother? So you get this pit of, I call it exact, that when it's exactly on the aspect within that degree, it's like a pit of despondency. Why bother? Who cares? What's like just this serious, this depression or inhibition is there. There's a great variety of ways this happens, but as you do this, you're going to, every person you meet, you should see how their identity crisis happened and how it worked for you. But it's not enough to say identity crisis or pit of despondency. You see the depressions coming in, you feel, I'm not fitting in, I'm isolated, I'm not in part of the group, I'm not part of their, who am I? And I don't know who I am, I don't know what I want to do, why bother? So if you're a teenager, you could just say, I've been going to school for my parents, and suddenly you don't want to go to school anymore. You know, or you're in a marriage, or it ends at something, you pull into yourself. So you're pulling into yourself with Saturn hitting your ascendant. And other people are just noticing you weren't the way you used to be. You just pulled in. So it's a very necessary process, and really the beginning of your inner development. Until then, you really didn't have depth. You were working out in the world and being out there, and you started, it's the beginning of having to find some personal depth, something that's going to be yours. But nothing is going to be satisfying while Saturn's on your ascendant. Nothing's going to be enough to solve this when Saturn's on the ascendant. What happens is, as it's on the ascendant, you're caught for 14 years or whatever previous to, it's like coming up to that, you're caught in a certain pattern of growth, of being, a certain pattern of behavior. And suddenly it's not working anymore. And but your habit patterns are used to working in that pattern. And you're thinking in that pattern. And so you're at this identity crisis, but you're thinking, it should be working like this. I had it figured out. It should be working, it should be going like this. All your plans are supposed to be in a certain way. It's not working like anymore. You've grown out of it, or it's run away from you. So even though you're trying to go forward, your thoughts and patterns are pulling you back into trying to behave the way you used to, and you keep failing because you're going back into the past. Every time you do something with an old attitude or an old pattern when Saturn's in your ascendant, it's going to fail. You can't rely on what you did in the past or what's been out there. You have to start, what am I doing? Who am I? But usually you have to stop crying about the loss first. So this